I do believe we are live. Okay, let's make sure we're live on Facebook here. Technology can be a little tricky at times,
Technology can indeed be tricky.
but it looks like we got a winner here. We got a winner here. Woo, 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 woo. Hey, everybody. This is Shelly Show Williams, and this is 30 interviews in 30 days celebrating Black History Month, Black excellence, and of course, Urban Expressions 30. So that's where the whole 30 comes on. It's 30 years for Urban Expressions. Can you believe it? Woo, 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 woo. And today, of course, we have to celebrate Nathaniel Lee on 222. No, 2222. Can you believe it?
2222.
All those great numbers there. And Nathaniel Lee is an author, journalist, radio host, and just so many other things. But the fact is, he's actually my friend. Hey, friend, how are you?
I am well, Shelly. Good to see you as always with your beautiful self. And before I even begin, let me say congratulations to Urban Expressions 30th anniversary. That's no small feat to accomplish. You guys accomplished it. So I'd be remiss in my duties if I didn't first start off by saying congratulations to Urban Expressions on your 30th.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. The team appreciates it. It's just like, hey, why not celebrate it, right? It's the great month, Black History. And so while we're celebrating Black History, you have made Black history. You are like a change maker in Black history. You started off not even wanting to be a writer, but became a front page newspaper writer. And I think that is definitely a change making, history making thing. So let's start off with what did you want to be when you grow up? When you grow up, how to say, what did you want to be when you grew up? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, actually, I did. I was the strangest child. I did want to, I wanted to be an artist. So I would draw, like, I guess what they call pictographs. I would draw stories with art, like images and stories with art. And I would use all kinds of scratch paper and all of this. I'd make like little comic books and etc. So I was fascinated with art, and I was fascinated with storytelling, even as a baby, before I was even able to write. So I would have little drawings, like a cave drawing.
Like little stick figures for you?
They were stick figures.
Okay.
I started out with stick figures, and they evolved over time, and they became a little more elaborate. But so and in a way, I did always wanted to write. I never wanted to write newspapers, but I always wanted to write. And I was one of those people that listened to talk radio when I was a child. It's something about the sound of the human voice, the interchange of ideas and discussions. So when I was young, when my brothers and my sisters and my friends were listening to music, I was listening to talk radio. My sister used to call it, there was a station I used to listen to, a WWDB, I believe it was. And my sister called it the station where everybody sounded alike. They all had the same voice. I didn't get that, but so I always wanted to do those things. To make a long story short, I know too late.
So make a long story short, you actually always wanted to be a writer, but not necessarily a newspaper writer. But
never wanted to do newspaper. Never even thought. To me, I saw myself writing narratives and maybe a little fiction. I'm not a fiction guy at all. Or should I say very rarely, but I always wanted to write and to tell people stories and etc. And it just so happens that led me many years later into newspapers, but newspapers wasn't my aspiration.
But newspapers wasn't your aspirations. However, God had it a different way, and you began writing for major newspapers, right? So how did you initially get started with writing with the Philadelphia Tribune? And I know you started with a lot of other places, but we know that the Philadelphia Tribune was one of the newspapers you wrote for like how many years?
12.
Whoa.
Yeah, about 12 years. 12 years. Yeah. Now, what happened, as you said, I started writing for other publications prior to that. And so I think one of the first was Mr. Jim Tyone, the late Mr. Tyone. He's passed away, but at the public record, he gave me a couple of assignments and he asked me to write. And that was my first, I used to write for organizations, groups and organizations. Now that I had like 20 years in the game, at this point, about some 20 years, but that's where I started off at. And I loved writing getting people's, I'm mission oriented. Mm-hmm. So I loved that. I loved doing the press releases. I loved writing their presentations and creating. And so I started with the public record and I wasn't getting paid or anything, but I did a couple of articles there. Then it became the Westside Weekly. And I stayed there. I really loved it there. I loved the community aspect. And a friend of mine who worked at the Tribune said, look, I'd like to see if maybe you would like to write for the Tribune. And he arranged for an interview and I went and not expecting much. And when I went in, the interview was like, I had like 6 editors throwing questions at me. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't a newspaper guy really, really, really then, but, I knew the craft. I knew, how I just answered from the hip. And next thing you know, I got an assignment and I'm reading the paper one day and I see my story. I'm like, whoa, they gave me a test story and I didn't even think it would be published. And it's been on since then. And from then, a number of other publications. So that's what started. And I believe was that your question?
It was basically, how did you get started at the Tribune? You answered that. That was so. It was one of those things that you started off. You did what you wanted to do. You started writing for different publications, and then you get a major one, relatively major. You know what I mean? Tribune is like the oldest Black newspaper in Philadelphia, so that's a pretty great feat. So then, now, did you consider yourself an actual journalist? Or were you still teeter-tottering, like, am I really a journalist? When did you decide that, hey, I'm a journalist?
Well, I'll be honest with you. It's so strange. And I'm just now, maybe a couple of years ago, realizing that this is a common thing. But because over time I gravitated towards the Black community, always did. Always loved telling those stories that I figured other reporters and other publications would bypass or not find interest in. And so what I found out was they started making front page all the time. And so there was times I'd pick up a Philadelphia Tribune and be on the front page. I'd pick up a Westside Weekly that week and be on the front page. And I'd pick up the UC Review and be on the front page. So I'm on the front page of 3 publications, different stories in each. And this happened. At first, I thought it was a fluke. Well, maybe, maybe somebody liked me or something like that. Maybe it was political because I didn't have any enemies or anything. And so I felt like a fluke. But then as it started happening, it continued for years and years and years. It never abated. And for years that went on. And so then I started feeling like I started suffering from what they call imposter syndrome. Really felt like it, but like, how is this actually happening? And up until very recently, then I realized this is a common thing. So no, I didn't feel like a journalist. I knew I was doing a job of a journalist. I think I knew I was doing some important work, but I never really, until recently, felt like a legitimate journalist.
12 years later, just recently, you feel like a journalist. So let's talk about the significance of a front page story. People may not be in the newspaper business, but what does that actually mean to a someone who is a writer, someone who has written a story and made it to the front page? What is the significance of that for a writer?
Well, I didn't put a lot of significance in it myself. Again, like I didn't go to the schools for journalism and et cetera. I pounded the beat, and that's how I learned. I pounded the beat, and I had some guidance along the way, and but I learned by doing. And I think so. I didn't really care that much about the front page part. It was an honor. Don't get me wrong. It was honored, and again, but I had the hostage syndrome, so. But the significance is, it's just like anything. You put your best foot forward all the time. So when you're on the front page, those are the stories, the lead stories are the ones that you really think will capture readers. You really think are important, that you put them in a prominent place. And so to have done that for 13 years, 12 years, 12, 13 years, and to have prominently been placed in such a prominent position on the front page so many times over the years, it wasn't until much, much later that I began to say, wow, this really, maybe it is legitimate.
Again, I'm pretty sure it is. I mean, we know as people, I know a front page story to me is like, what? What do you mean we did that? Oh, that is a great thing. So congratulations on your many years of having a front page story, because it is significant. It is that means your work is being seen, and they chose your work to be, on the front paper. So you've transitioned from journalism to increase, I don't know, radio personality. Would you consider that? That's still a part of journalism. So
yes, that's still journalism. It's just not print journalism.
It's just print journalism. So now you have you're still writing for the paper, right? You're still writing for different papers.
Well, actually, no. I'm trying to. It was weird because 2 years ago I began becoming disenchanted with the print media, and not just that. It's just because I was telling the stories, and there's some things I really wanted to tell I knew wouldn't be accepted. And if I was going to be a journalist, I wanted to tell all sides of it. And so I found that it was getting a little flat in the Black media. It was the stories are getting a little flat. They were getting a little one-sided. And so I guess I kind of got disenchanted. I got bored with it. So I'm still writing, but I don't have that passion. And if anybody's listening, that don't mean, I try to be objective and et cetera, but it's kind of like, I guess the thrill is kind of gone.
Okay, I mean, not even just the thrill is going. I think with anybody, when you've been doing something long, you want to do something different. So yes, you can still do writing in newspapers, but to expand, you've expanded to what? You've expanded into creating your own lane with your own I guess brand, you would say. So tell us about the expansion into radio on what? WURD radio. So tell us about the expansion into radio.
Well, I've always been a guy who came up with ideas, suggestions. Like I'm a dreamer. Some people call it visionary. I just say I'm a dreamer. I love coming up with ideas and concepts for shows and programs and stuff like that, whether it's community-based, organizational, whatever. And so writing allows you to do those things out loud. And so one day, I had an idea with it where I wanted to tell a different type of news. Like I told you earlier, like I said earlier, I was kind of getting tired of the same old news, the same old, and so I came up with a concept. I said, we need some news that is uplifting. We need some news that's empowering. And so I came up with Tell Me Something Good. And so I was at a station, and I actually wrote it down on my computer and, pushed it around in my head a little bit. And so I was intending it to pitch the idea to someone at Word Radio, because I'm good friends who work there. And so I happened to have been a guest on Brother Shamari's show, whose show Groundings come on every Friday and Sunday. And so I was a guest for some other reason, community issue that I had covered, and he invited me in to talk about that. And we were in the break room during break, and I told him about the idea, and he said, well, you could do that here. And so I gave him the idea. I wrote it up for him. He asked me to write it up for him. I sent it to him. And that was 2 years ago. Two years later, we're still doing Tell Me Something Good, where we have interviews with positive and enlightening and empowering people. We give news briefs of positive things happening in the Black community. Then it started then there was a column in the University City Review, Tell Me Something Good column. And from that came Tell Me Something Good podcast. Actually, the podcast came before the column. So then came the podcast, which I host ideally every week. It hasn't turned out that way. But So yeah, it became almost like a little franchise.
It became, but it still is not. It's become so. It's a franchise. It's tell me something good, and you're repurposing it. You know, wink, wink.
Mhm.
Repurposing it. That's one of the things I teach on repurposing your content. So you repurpose it in different areas. Are you still? It will. Can you catch the tell me something good articles in the newspaper weekly? Or are you being able to continue to do that?
Actually, no. Actually, no. The column is no longer being written at this time. The podcast and, of course, the radio segment can be heard on the first and third Friday of every month. The podcast is, a matter of fact, it during the holiday, the last podcast was in December, and we're just relaunching for the year. Now it's actually on my computer now, ready to be uploaded.
So when it comes to newspaper writing, a lot of people think, why can't you just put my story in the paper? Why? But do you understand? I don't know, just to educate people, every line on the paper costs money. So if someone writes a page and they're saying, hey, 500 words of something, 500 words speaking about something or somebody, means that the paper has to pay per line, right? So is that,
Absolutely.
so most people think, why not? But every line on the paper has to be paid for by the newspaper. So that's why everything doesn't get to be written, because it costs money to be written. It always takes money to do everything we're doing. So how do you plan on expanding from tell me something good, the radio segment, the newspaper column, and the podcast? What is your next expansion going to be?
Well, those who listen to my podcast, that's a very new platform for me last year. And it was the responses I received for those, if someone is listening or watching, and you're out there and you were one of the people who gave me those responses, I thank you all for that. The responses were so encouraging. And so, but I had to learn that platform, and I'm still learning it, and so what I plan on is to really become well acquainted with it, so I can give my listeners the best experience possible. And so I want to make sure that I want to get it. How should I say? I want to make sure that they know exactly when to get it. Like I had erratic publishing last year. I'm dual employed, multi-employed. There's a whole bunch of issues that happen in life. So I want to get more consistent with the publishing. I want to bring back the column. Not yet. I'm going to bring back the column because right now I have to slow some things down. There's a lot happening, and and I want to continue to work on the content. So if it's basically been news briefs in the podcast and informative information. But next, I want to bring about interviews, sort of like what we're doing now. Tell me something good, interviews, etc. So I want to continue to build on the content and the professionalism of it, and to make sure that it's the scheduling of it, the publishing of it is more consistent.
All right. So what do you want to do when you grow up?
Oh, that's a good question.
What do you want to do when you grow up?
Well, I'm like Peter Pan, and as I mentioned in my book, The Peter Pan Complex, I never want to grow up.
I agree with that. I never want to grow up either.
I see the problem that those adults out there have and the responsibilities, and I'm like, no, not for me. No, I want to be, and I wrestled with this, Shelley. I wrestled with this. I'm like, when I got to the newspaper, and I realized that when I sit and I write an article, I'm like, oh, it's like pulling teeth now. I loved it for so long. I loved being out there, but when the story starts sounding the same, and I'm like, well, if you're not doing this, and you're obviously pretty good at it, what are you going to do? And so I want to produce content. I actually want to be a content creator on various platforms. YouTube, podcasting, writing of different types, except I just don't want to. The thing about journalism that I guess I found it got boring to me, was the who, what, where, when thing. And it's this format. And I played with it. and it drove some editors crazy, but they liked it, and it was created without playing with the facts. Language is very fluid, so I try to use it. I try to use the magic of language in a way that people get the story, but they feel like they're in it. And that's one of the greatest compliments. So many people over the years have said, man, when I read your articles, it's like I'm there, and I'm just talking about something that happened in the community. I will play with AP style. I will take chances with the language, but without jeopardizing the facts, and so I just want to be a content creator now. And as a content creator, I'm able to go out there and use the magic of language, to use the magic of imagery, to create, again, I'm a dreamer. So now I get to dream out loud using various platforms. And that's what I want to do in the future.
So with that, I have coming up, I have Creative Boss Course Academy, which is going to teach us creatives, the podcasters, the radio show hosts, how to use your platform to make money through courses. Because actually, how are you going to make money doing it? How does it? Unless you have major followings, that's who really makes the money in the whole media thing. So what are some ways that you're going to be able to monetize it, to say cash in on it? What are some ways you're going to be able to cash in on being a content creator?
Well, it's sort of like, and I didn't mention this, when I first began in journalism, because I began working with various organizations, I was always their media person. I was always their the person who did their journals. I was always the person who did their articles. I was always the person who did their press releases, even their public service announcements for the radio. And I found that I love that, because I had the creative license to do as I please, just get the message out. And it always worked. I have no idea that, I'm just blessed that God gave me that talent. But one thing when I started doing newspapers, I started just writing newspapers. I would volunteer my writing for different causes that I'm passionate about. And they would almost always get published. And but I didn't ask for a fee. And I would tell people, they would say things like, well, aren't they using you? I said, no, they're not. They might be using me, but they're not exploiting me, because I'm learning the craft as I'm doing it. This is for me. And and in answer to your question, right now I'm learning the platforms. I'm learning the craft. I'm making my bones, so to speak. And so the first task for me is to build an audience while I'm learning. And then from that, I can capitalize later on. Because people don't know me in those areas. They know me in writing, and journalism, but they don't know me in podcasting. They don't know me in these other areas. So right now, it's all about learning the craft, giving them the best, becoming my best, so I can give them my best. And then later on, I believe people will pay you. Your gift will make room for you.
So that's right. Your gift will make room for you. But what you didn't say, I was hoping you said, well, I'm going to transition into what? I am now a published author, but he is now a published author of Metamorphosis. Tell us about, Metamorphosis. Some people are like, hey, what is that all about? Because I believe, me personally, knowing your backstory, you don't talk much about your backstory, but knowing your backstory and knowing where you are now, you have totally made, your life is a metamorphosis. Everything you do is a transition and transformation. And it's like, wow, to see where you've come from. So talk about the whole metamorphosis process. It's a process.
It is definitely a process, and I am an example of that process. As I said, I was on Rick Ford's show on Word Radio Recovery Talk 101, and he interviewed me about the book, and I was telling him, I said, well, Rick, the person I am now, I was not 20 plus years ago. I was incarcerated. I was in a system. As a matter of fact, this is where my metamorphosis began. The guy that you see, that's the teetotaler. Well, I've hung with a bunch of guys, roughnecks who we worked all week, but at night we go out and drink and party and get into bar fights and get all stitched up and go to work the next day. wake up in the hospital, not remember what's going on. Other people in the hospital, we don't know why we put them there. My life was actually a wreck. My life was actually a wreck. And so the metamorphosis that I talk about in the book, even though I don't mention myself in the book, but the process that I talk about in the book is the process that I incorporated and I utilized myself. The metamorphosis, and I always say this, if you're looking for something new, like if you're just looking for something like, it's going to give me 10 secrets to success. But these aren't secrets. These aren't secrets. In fact, they're passed down. What the difference here is that in the process of metamorphosis that I've learned, experienced, and it's not just based off my experiences. Yes, they are based off my experiences, but hundreds of people whom I know and I've shared with before I even become a writer, people used to come to me for their advice. And I say this, I said this to someone the other day. I've never seen anyone come back and say, I've tried this and it didn't work. People will come back 20 years later and say, man, you told me this and I thank you. Or you said this and I didn't listen and I wish I did because then this happened, and to the day. But and I praise God for that. I should have been a life coach, but
who says you can't? You still not, you didn't grow up yet. You have time. You're still young.
Right. I'm still on Never Land. Right.
Yeah, you have some. You should be a life coach. I mean, you gloss over some things. It's like I don't understand why we're in the world when it comes to social media world. We tell our life. Most people start with their story, like Les Brown, when he's speaking, he's talking about the story. What is that story you have to tell? And most people can identify with the story, but you'll gloss over one story, the story that says, "Yo, I spent 12 years as a front page writer, but yet and still, I had a transformation that was, I used to be incarcerated." Like that to me is like, wait a minute. If you told that story and then say, I wrote this book, and they see what your life really is, because if you never told me, I would never, ever, ever in my life think so. You know what I mean? So that should sell every book. Your books should really just fly off the shelves, because that transformation that you made, the metamorphosis you made, is incredible. Like I can't even, like I promise you, because I know you, I'm like, man, you couldn't tell me. I still don't believe it. I mean, I know it's true, but I still don't believe it. And I've known you for years. I still don't believe it. Not you. So that means that everything that you've written in the book, the process that you use to change and transform is real. It's real.
And Shelly, to this day, I was talking to someone and I smelled a cigarette. And it just disgusts me, and et cetera, et cetera. And they mentioned it too. And I said, yeah, remind me. And they asked me, did I ever smoke? I said, yeah, I smoked for 20-something years. And he looked at me and said, I can't even picture a cigarette in your mouth. I said, I smoked, I drank, I did. And I said, and they was shocked. And I said, yeah, that's what transformation is. When a caterpillar goes into its cocoon and transforms into a butterfly, and he crawls inside, but he flies out. And he's furry and wiggly when he goes inside, but he's beautiful and painted and colorful when he flies out. You see very little resemblance or no resemblance at all to the caterpillar, to the butterfly that you saw from the caterpillar. It's totally different. And so if I look like, somebody say, oh yeah, I can see it, then is that real transformation? The real transformation is when you no longer can be identified or have the appearance or exhibit the same behaviors that you did prior to your transformation. And so there's no going back. You can go through it. As I write in the book, you can go through it or you can grow through it. And I chose to grow through it, which means once you expand, you don't go back to the same shape you were before. You can't fit the same pants once you grow. If I'm a 38, I can't fit my 32 pants anymore. It's been many, many years since I wore a 32. But anyway, and that's the process of transformation. And I chose in the book to focus more on the actual process itself, because I got tired of telling my story, to say the truth. And I said, I want to tell. I don't want to limit. I don't want this to make this a thing for simply those who are returning citizens. I don't want to make this a thing for those who are in recovery or somewhere. I wanted to make it and keep it general, so because it is a customized blueprint for personal transformation, so that people who whether they have habits they're trying to break, or whether they have occupations they're trying to break into but may be stuck, can take these changes and customize them, take these suggestions and customize them to their own needs. And so I didn't want to paint it with a certain brush.
And I do understand that. But as a marketing person, I'm just trying to paint it with the brush, because I'm like, all right, can we do a challenge? Let's do a transformation, a metamorphosis challenge, where we do like a 10-day challenge. We implement some of the process, and in 10 days, let's see how things change. But I'm ready to just market it from that particular standpoint, because I said, you're right. You don't look like what, not that I knew you before, but I know from what I know, you don't look like that. A cigarette, I would never, ever believe. You don't smoke, you don't drink, and you come from that. So if anybody wanted to change, if you wanted to really transform from a habit that you had, so it's basically breaking bad habits.
No, that's just a part of it, because everyone's not, change isn't just for those who have a habit they want to leave. Sometimes it's people who have habits they want to acquire. And so, for example, when I became a writer, I had to learn certain habits of a writer. Writers write. We write every day. Now there's a difference between a published writer and a writer, but the thing that makes a writer isn't whether they get published, it's whether they write. And so those who are reading the book, and they learn some of the habits, they learn some of the principles, and they never had a problem with drugs. They've never been incarcerated. They've never hit rock bottom in any way. They don't have any habits they're trying to get rid of. They're trying to learn new habits. They can incorporate these same things, customize the same principles and practices that I've discussed here to maybe become that writer, or become that radio personality, or to become, maybe they have a problem with, maybe not a problem with drugs or anything, but maybe there's a problem with stability, maybe in certain areas. These principles, these practices can be incorporated there. So it's holistic, and which is why this is actually a workbook, because you could just read the book and get some gems out of it. There is no doubt about it. But at each chapter, there is a worksheet where you get to incorporate and practice. And that's how we change, through practice. You get to practice the things that you read, and then you start finding yourself change. You start finding, when you practice on an ongoing basis, you start finding yourself becoming. And that's what this book is about. It's about the process of becoming. Whatever it is you wish to become, wherever it is you seek to go in life, this book is about that process of becoming. Whether you want to become something, you're trying to escape something in your past, or change something in your past, or whether it's something you aspire to in your future.
All right, so pick the book up for me. Show me the book.
I will show you the book.
There's Metamorphosis, or I can't.
Can you see it?
There you go, Metamorphosis. So tell me, without giving away your whole book, right? Give me the first step to transformation. What's the first step in the book? Read a little bit out of it for the first step.
Okay, well, matter of fact, that is the name of the first chapter. Do you want me to read it or tell you about it?
You can read it or tell me about it, but I just want to know what my first step, because the first step should be picking up the book.
That's you read this, haven't you? The first step is picking up the book, and that is what it says the first step is. Those who have picked up this book have already made a first step. They're curious about change. They desire change. They desire evolution. And wait a minute, let me say, when I say change, that doesn't mean that you're changing from something bad. It doesn't mean you have bad habits you like to change. But again, it could be something you aspire to. But whatever the change is, the first step is you have already taken once you acquired this book, or you begin talking to someone about change. You begin taking some step towards learning the process of change, or doing something to implement that change. And so that is the first step.
The first step is getting the book. Why, if I want to take, there's a lot of life coaches, there's a lot of coaches out there, there's a lot of people who speak on getting out of your way, getting unstuck. But if I had to take advice from somebody, I want to take advice from somebody who I've watched totally transform their life, who was a witness, and your life is public record. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing. Your life is a public record. So if anybody, sometimes people could say, oh, I did this and I changed here and I did this, and you can't really find the proof, but your life is the proof. Your life is on a public record right now. If somebody goes search for Nathaniel Lee inside of the, the system, you'll find Nathaniel Lee, right? It is public. So I know for sure that it's a fact, Jax. I know it's a fact that your life has made a total transformation. And if I wanted somebody to teach me how to change whatever habit that is, or whatever thing I want to be, whatever we want to be when we grow up, because we all want to be something when we grow up, even if we are grown. So I'm going to say, hey, get Metamorphosis. It's available on Amazon right now. It's available. And if you need to, and I'm not saying you're a bad person. Change doesn't mean you're coming from something bad and you want to change into something different or something good, but it just means that you want something for your life that's not the same right now. You may want to be a journalist, and you may want to be a radio personality, or you may just want to be better at something. So if you talk about Metamorphosis, the book, man, these steps, this process is real. It's just so real, right? And I'm not saying it because it's not my book, it's your book. I just want y'all to understand what it's like to know somebody personally and like, whoa, wow, you're amazing. So Nathaniel Lee, what are the one thing that you would want someone to know right now? Like, what is that thing that says Nathaniel Lee is what?
Nathaniel Lee is a creative. I am a creative. I am someone who aspire to use in Swahili is the word in Kwanzaa Kalumba, creativity. And I believe that the same way we use our creativity for entertainment, we could use our that creativity to create businesses. Look at Facebook, look at Zoom. That's the process of creativity. Finding innovative ways of doing new things, except I'd like to use my talents and gifts. I believe it's a gift from God. And I do believe it's a gift of God, which means I have a responsibility to use this, and woe be unto me if I mess that gift up or I misuse it, misapply it. And so I'm very serious about it. And so as a creative, I believe that my passion is to help people do just what this book says, metamorphosize. I've done this prior to this book. Before this book existed, I had a little workbook, and I held sessions at a church in North Philadelphia. It was 8 weeks. I've since held other lectures on the subject using that same workbook, where people would come, and it was mostly men from shelters or in recovery, and they would come every week. And it got to the point where I was living in Southwest Philadelphia. I would drive after work, and I'd get there, and the guys would see my car, my little Honda Civic, pull up. I had a Honda Civic back then, and they would flock to me. Now you would figure like sitting 60 to 90 minutes in the back of a room in a church, talking to me and listening to the same curriculum, almost the same curriculum, but this book didn't exist then. But they were fascinated. I would give them exercises, sort of like, and at the end of this book, there are exercises. Well, I gave them exercises to do to help them throughout the week until we got back together. And they would do them and report on them. What I didn't realize was the enthusiasm in which they did it. These were men who had other things to do, they had other issues, but they would come back and be so enthusiastic about sharing what they learned from it. And then that's when I realized, wow, this thing really is potent, and to whom much is given, much is required. I have to really be intentional about this process, because these guys have really embraced it. And And that led to this book. That led to Metamorphosis. I'm hoping to do some more things with Metamorphosis.
I'm hoping. We want to pre-book his course. He has a course coming up. It's the Metamorphosis course. So he has a curriculum he's going to teach. And if you really want to learn more, if you really want to make some changes, whether it's losing weight, whether it's becoming. Let's just say becoming, because
Becoming.
you could be becoming. So if you want to be a part of the course, it's coming. So if you want to go to Nate Lee Writes, he's on Instagram at Nate Lee Writes. Go to your website, which is what?
www.frontpagenate.org or .com.
So go join the mailing list, get on the mailing list so you can get the information. When I say I wouldn't tell you no lie. I mean, you want to become whatever you want to become, or if you want to change doesn't change unless you change. So if you want that, be a part of the course. It is coming up. And for anybody that is listening right now, you get on right now. It's going to be a discounted price, but the next time it's going to be a little, you know what? Because it does cost. I think that's the thing, the change we need to do in life, that things do cost money. You have to pay for services. You have to pay for knowledge. You have to pay. And it is time for pay. If you want it bad enough, you want to become what it is bad enough, you will pay for it. So thank you, Nathaniel Lee. This is 30 interviews in 30 days, celebrating Black History Month, Black culture, and of course, 30 years for urban expressions. One more time, hold up the book and tell them how they can get it.
Okay, Metamorphosis. Let me turn this light off so they can see it. Metamorphosis, a customized blueprint for personal transformation. And it is just that. You can customize it to whatever the needs or desires of your heart happen to be, whatever your interests happen to be. And you can get it from Amazon.com and Metamorphosis. Just hit Metamorphosis by Nathaniel Lee. It'll pop right up. You can get it both in paperback. It'll be delivered to you for $14.95 paperback. And you can also get the ebook. So if you want it immediately, you want it instantly, download it to your device, your computer, what have you, so you can read it on the go. You can also get it in ebook format on Kindle, and that's $12.95.
All right. Thank you so much, Nathaniel Lee. This will not be the last time you will see Nathaniel Lee. He's going to be all over, and we're going to pray that whatever God has for you, it is for you. But we pray much success for you, because you deserve it. You deserve to sell millions of books, and not just for yourself, because he doesn't care about financial gain, but for the fact that if you get this, lives will be changed. And he's not selfish with his gift, because he says he's using it for the Lord, which is what we should do, right? So thank y'all so much for listening. Make sure you go get Metamorphosis by Nathaniel Lee, frontpagenate.org or .com, or go to Amazon. Most people, I'm not going to go in totality. Most people have Amazon or know how to buy something on Amazon. So click the link, buy the book, and start making the changes that you feel necessary. If you put some changes on your vision board for 2022, make this part of the change. It will transform your life. So thank y'all so much for listening. Thank you for checking it out. I didn't go to Facebook to see if anybody was listening or anything like that. So let me go see Facebook. Make sure there's no messages before we sign off right now. But Nathaniel Lee, if I missed anything, you can go ahead while I go ahead to I try to log on to Facebook, which is very slow right now. Anything else you want to tell the folks?
No, Shelley, actually, you are very thorough, but I want to tell the folks, first of all, I really appreciate so many people in our community, so many people, some of them I don't even know, have so blessed me. They had suggestions or comments, and the compliments have been extraordinary. So I'm always careful to say, look, I want you to get the book, because I'm more into the mission than the money, and I want you to share it with those who know may be in need of whatever change. Again, it's about who you become, who you are, not what you have. So I really want to see lives change. My life was changed. The people that I've had, I know many people whose lives were changed, and I believe that your life can change as well.
All right. Shout out to DJ Kid Disco. He said, hey, good stuff. So shout out for you to listening. Shout out to everybody who's out there. 30 interviews in 30 days. We'll be back tomorrow with another interview. 30 days of nonstop, just pouring into you through people. I think some people get confused and think that they can only learn something from a celebrity, or they can, if they connect with the celebrity or somebody who has done something they think is a miraculous or whatever, then that's who they want to listen to. But I'm sorry, us people, all people have something to say, can teach you something. So tune in. This is just gonna be Black culture, black lives, Black life, Black success, Black excellence. All month long. All right, y'all. Peace.